everyone, and welcome to Museums Under the Spotlight. I'm Alina Dima, your host, and today it is with immense pleasure that I would love to invite you to visit one of Europe's most famous castles. Initially built by the Teutonic Knights, it eventually became a royal summer retreat. The Bran Castle, because this is what we are going to visit today, is surrounded by mysteries and world-famous legends, but it is also Queen Marie's most favorite castle. So let us admire the narrow corridors and the rustic rooms of the Bran Castle.
Once upon a time, there was a rocky fortress surrounded by mist and dark forests. And this is how the story begins. Upon one's arrival at Bran Castle, one immediately realizes that the structure of this edifice is the one of a medieval fortress, placed high up on a rock, difficult to reach, an observation and also a defensive point, surrounded by hills covered with thick forests. The landscape is impressive, and most visitors come to this enchanting place driven by curiosity and also by the will to meet a legendary character. But once you go inside and listen to the history of the castle, you come to understand that there is so much more to discover about this magnificent place. Back in 1377, the constructors only built what is considered to be today's core of the castle, meaningly the enclosure walls, the western tower, and the gunpowder hold. Later in time, 3 other towers were added, and also numerous elements in the courtyard, the staircases, and the terraces. The look of the castle has changed a lot in time. Major improvements were made at Queen Marie's request between 1920 and 1929. But let's not spoil all the surprises at once, so we can fully enjoy our visit.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, today is a very, very special day as we are visiting one of the world's most famous castles, the Bran Castle. And together with our host, Mrs. Alexandra Cojanu, we are going to discover the history of this beautiful castle and also the myths and the legends that surround it. Hello, and thank you so much for having us here today. It is truly delightful to be in one of the world's most famous castles.
Thank you so much for being here today and welcome. We are going to discuss a little bit about the history of the castle. Last year in November we celebrated 640 years of existence, so it's quite a lot. Everything starts in 1377 when the castle was built. It was actually the first stage of construction. Bran Castle was built at the border between 2 historical Romanian regions, which were Transylvania and Wallachia, the northern part of current Romania and the southern side. And its purpose was to protect the border, to overcome the Ottoman invasions mainly, and also to collect customs taxes in the area. That was its role for about 500 years. So for 500 years we're speaking of a stronghold, a military castle located right at the border. During all this time there were about 15 to 20 soldiers living here. And in case of attack, they were asking for help from the local community. And much more later, in 1920, after losing its strategic importance and when it would have probably become a ruin, the castle was saved it was offered as a gift to our second queen, to Queen Mary, King Ferdinand's wife. She completely changed things here, and she made the castle her favorite retreat in the country. She lived here up until 1938 when she passed away. Then the castle was transferred to one of her daughters, to Princess Ilana. She also lived here. And now Bran Castle belongs to Queen Mary's grandchildren and Princess Ilana's children. His Imperial Royal Highness Dominic Habsburg and Lothringen, Archduke of Austria and Prince of Tuscany, and his two sisters, Maria Magdalena Holzhausen and Elizabeth Sandhofer.
Apparently, or at least according to a few legends, another iconic figure for the history of Romania is somewhat related to Bran Castle, and that is one of the most important Wallachian princes, Vlad the Impaler.
That's right.
He was also a crusader, a Christian prince, fighting against the Ottoman Empire in order to save Christianity, and he also had an important role in several battles in Western Europe. He managed to avoid the Ottoman troops to arrive to Vienna. But what I am wondering is if there is any direct connection between him and the castle.
Yes, it is. The story is a bit complicated because people sometimes confuse the two characters. One of them is Dracula the vampire, the fictional creation, and the other one is indeed Vlad Impaler, the ruler of Wallachia. Vlad Impaler to us is a symbol of justice. He was not the owner of Bran Castle at that time, or never the official owner of the castle, I would say. The two main links between Bran Castle and Vlad Impaler are the following. It seems that in 1459 he conquered Bran Castle, and it seems that 3 years later, in 1462, he was imprisoned here due to a conflict with the Hungarian king. He's been accused of betrayal. So again, historically speaking, these two are the main links between the castle you're visiting today and Vlad Impaler, or Dracula, the real prince, because Dracula was a name coming from our history.
Well, and it is not only us that visits the castle today, but many other thousands of people, and also tens of thousands during the year. But since you mentioned Dracula, of course the castle is a lot more known to the majority of tourists for the legends of the Count, the famous Count, due to Bram Stoker's novel. Bram Stoker was an Irishman that never set foot in Romania, but based his whole novel on several documents coming from medieval times that represented or depicted Vlad the Impaler in a certain way, not necessarily the most positive of ways, but I would like to get into detail, and I know that there is a special room inside the castle that talks about this.
That's true. Then let's go see it.
Well, we mentioned earlier, back in the courtyard, that we would meet the famous Count Dracula.
And we're finally here.
Bram Stoker was a genius, and I think that we could thank him for the fact for the fact that he created such a novel, the world's best Gothic novel in the world, one of the most read books.
And the most published book in the world after the Bible. So quite a success, I would say.
And the castle is known as being Dracula's castle. According to the descriptions in the novel, maybe they are not 100% accurate, but still the resemblance is remarkable.
Yes, it is, because in the novel, Bram Stoker depicts Count Dracula's retreat as a castle high on a rock. The place is surrounded by forests, and it's located in the middle of the Carpathian Mountains in Transylvania. And this is the only spot in our country which fits Bram Stoker's description.
So let's talk a little bit about Dracula also, the famous vampire, but translating it somewhat into the Romanian beliefs when it comes to the supernatural. Do we have any vampires flying around at midnight?
There are not vampires in the Romanian mythology. Vampires weren't born here in Romania, but we do have strigoi. We have other supernatural creatures like strigoi that would translate to an undead or a revenant. There are people who die, but they cannot find their peace on the other world, and they come back to haunt the villages. And strigoi also drink blood. They don't drink human blood like vampires do. They only drink animal blood. So that's the main difference between a vampire and a strigoi. What really makes Dracula's story so appealing for people all around the world is that unlike other stories, this one is not entirely fictional, but based on real people, real places, and why not real facts. The story actually starts in the 15th century in Wallachia with Vlad Impaler, our bloody avenger ruler. He was famous, but not for drinking people's blood. He was famous for impaling them. And 4 centuries later, Bram Stoker reads about Vlad in the Royal Library in London, and he decides to use his image to create one of the most famous, but also one of the most frightening fictional characters in the world. After the 19th century, the story goes to the 20th century, to the Hollywood industry.
Each and every visitor would hope or would accept to meet Count Dracula at some point. Maybe they would have to wait until midnight.
That's an idea. I cannot promise you anything, but I wish you good luck.
From the medieval Wallachian prince Vlad the Impaler and the fictional character Count Dracula, we switch our focus to a romantic and royal personality. A stunningly beautiful woman, a queen, the queen of all Romanians. We are about to meet Queen Marie, one of Europe's most beautiful queens, whose contribution, devotion, and exquisite taste helped save the Bran Castle.
We were talking earlier in the courtyard about the fact that Queen Marie was the redemptor of the castle, if we may use this term. And now we are in her bedroom, and we set this scenery in order to understand better her personality and also her relationship with the castle. So I would really love for you to talk to us about these aspects.
Queen Marie was definitely remarkable. She did come here in 1920, and as I was saying, she completely changed the castle. She improved it, actually. She turned it from a simple, stern medieval fortress into a warm and cozy summer retreat. So the first floor of the castle became her apartment, including her bedroom. And after her death, this was Princess Ileana, her daughter's bedroom.
But coming back to Queen Marie's style, or at least the style imposed upon the castle, she must have worked with architects. I know that she was she had a very artistic personality. She was also a painter, and she loved interior decorations. She put her fingerprint, so to say, both on Peles Castle and on Perishor and Balchik also, all of the castle that were very close to her heart. Bran was no exception, but I wonder who she worked with in terms of styling.
She did have a very rich imagination and with artistic skills, but she was helped by Karel Liman, a Czech architect. He was next to her from 1920 to 1929, and then the castle was equipped with modern utilities like modern water supply, electricity, a telephone, and even an elevator.
We mentioned earlier a very important name for the castle, besides Queen Marie's name.
And that is Princess Ilana.
Princess Ilana, her beloved daughter, her favorite daughter actually, because documents and historians say that they really had a very special relationship. Probably this is one of the reasons why the Queen decided to give her beloved castle to Princess Ilana.
That's right. It wasn't the typical mother and daughter relationship, but they were also friends, very good friends. They were very close to each other.
So what happens to the castle once Princess Ilana becomes the owner, on Queen Marie's passing, of course?
The castle becomes her family's home. She lived here until 1948. She even built a hospital at the bottom of the castle to help the wounded soldiers in the Second World War. But in 1948, in January 1948, Princess Ilana and her family were forced into exile. When the communist regime was established here, all the members of the royal family of Romania were forced to leave the country. The castle was turned into a museum in the 50s, but back then it was a museum of medieval history and arts. Nothing here was related to the history of the royal family. The communists simply tried to erase everything that was connected to them. And she only got the chance to revisit her beloved places, Romania, Transylvania, and Bran as well, after the revolution, after Ceausescu's death. During that time, so before the revolution, she lived in the US, and she even founded an Orthodox monastery in the US, in Pennsylvania, the city of Elwood. One of the most interesting facts about Princess Ilana is that in the 60s she gave up her title and she became an Orthodox nun. She was no longer a princess, she was called Mother Alexandra after converting to a nun.
After a lifetime in exile, full of dramatic changes, Princess Ilana's last wish was to be able to come back to her beloved Romania once again. She prayed and hoped for this soul-enriching event to occur, and divinity, in all its glory, granted her this last request. As Mother Alexandra, the princess came back to Romania in 1990 to visit also her dear Bran Castle. Just a few months later, in 1991, she peacefully passed away, happy that her biggest wish came true. As a former medieval fortress, Bran Castle is full of surprises, and we are about to discover a secret.
You have brought me into a very special place that no one has access to, and I already feel extremely privileged. Of course, our viewers are going to be also very privileged and amazed by what we are about to see here.
And I'm glad to be able to do it. We are at the upper end of the secret passage. The secret passage was only discovered in the 20s during the refurbishing works initiated by the Queen, but it's older than that. It's about 500 years old. Its purpose was to connect the first and the fourth floors of the castle. It was previously hidden behind a fireplace, access made through the opening of the fireplace, of course. And in 1926, the architect of the royal family, Karl Lehmann, discovered the passage accidentally. And then they decided to rebuild the fireplace on the other corner of the room, and that's when the door and the steps were added. So the door and the steps at the first floor were only added in 1926 after discovering the passage. The passage was obviously used for defense. The soldiers here could hide themselves in case of attack, and they were having quick and easy access to the murder holes at the fourth floor. So that was the main purpose. And today,
well, it's no longer a secret, because
it's no longer a secret.
The
it's
visitors
a public
do
secret.
have access, at least on a certain portion of the secret tunnel.
It's a public secret nowadays, but that's the reason why we still call it a secret one. It was only discovered in the 20s.
Medieval princes and soldiers, legendary supernatural characters, and most of all, royal beauties. This is the atmosphere that you'll find yourself in at the Bran Castle.
Ladies and gentlemen, I really hope that you have enjoyed the castle's beautiful scenery, its history, and also all the legends related to it. Most of all, I believe that this is a royal castle in all ways and all senses. So it's a must-see. You really have to come visit the Bran Castle. Until next time, remember to make your life a beautiful story.